On the 12th of September 1943, a daring raid by the German Luftwaffe sought to rescue the deposed Italian dictator Benito Mussolini from his prison on a mountaintop. The raid would catch the Allied forces off guard and rob the new Italian government of a valuable prisoner, whilst providing a valuable propaganda win. In today's video, we will cover the raid in the Gran Sasso Mountains. It's perhaps helpful to start with the fall of fascist Italy. Mussolini had styled his regime as the Roman Empire reborn, promising to recapture the ancient glory days and rebuild a broken Italy. But Italy's entry into World War II proved to be disastrous. The Italian forces in North Africa failed to defeat the British in the early years of the war, and their invasion of Greece was stopped by a defiant Greek resistance. In both instances, Italian forces were hampered by poor morale, a lack of decent equipment, and underestimating the opposing side. Italy would rely heavily on their German allies in the war, leaving Italy playing a secondary role. Once the Axis forces in North Africa were defeated, the Allies could turn their attention to invading Italy. In July of 1943, the Allies launched their invasion of Sicily, hoping to open up another front and put pressure on what the Allies termed the soft underbelly of Europe. For the fascist ruling council, and for King Emmanuel III, their faith in Mussolini as a leader had long gone. They passed a vote of no confidence in Mussolini and arrested the former Duce on the 25th of July 1943. In August of 1943, the Italian and German forces were defeated on Sicily, spelling the end of the Axis alliance. The Italian government sought to leave Nazi Germany and join the Allies instead. And so a new government was formed, and they entered into secret negotiations with the Allies. On the 8th of September 1943, an armistice came into effect, taking Italy out of the war. But the German forces had long been planning for Italy's exit from the war, with plans to occupy northern Italy, disarm Italian soldiers, and install a puppet regime to act as a buffer between them and the invading Allies. Upon hearing of the armistice, German forces quickly put these plans into place, but they needed Mussolini to be freed from prison. So one of Nazi Germany's key aims was to rescue Mussolini from prison. Otto Skorzeny, a 6'4" SS commando with distinctive facial scars, would play a key role in learning about Mussolini's location, though his role would be largely exaggerated. Otto was a member of the Waffen-SS, the military wing of one of the most powerful organizations in Nazi Germany. During the Second World War, Skorzeny fought on the Eastern Front until he was injured. He returned to Berlin, where he developed the German commando units. Learning from British commando raids, Skorzeny trained a unit ready for more unconventional warfare. He was also able to use his connections with the Italian police and intelligence to track down Mussolini. He found out that Mussolini was being moved from one location to another, but his investigation would lead him to learn of Mussolini's final location, a hotel at Gran Sasso. Now, this hotel was at the top of one of the highest mountains in Italy. Access to the hotel was rather limited. One of the only ways to get to the top was by a cable car that rose 3,000 feet up into the mountains. And not only this, Mussolini was guarded by around 200 troops. It ought to have been a solid defensive position, with machine guns on the roof in a hard-to-reach location. However, there was some luck on the Nazis' side. The confusion of the armistice and the change in government would mean a lack of clear orders as to what to do. Such factors would only make the raid that much easier for the Nazis. The operation to rescue Mussolini was commanded by a Luftwaffe general, Kurt Student, and the actual planning for the mission was carried out by Major Harald Moors. The plan had to be prepared in only a matter of hours, with Allies advancing from southern Italy and concerns that Mussolini might be moved again. The plan was to send 2 companies to capture the cable car station at the bottom of the mountain. Another company of paratroopers would land on the mountain near the hotel aboard gliders. At the same time, a single truck of soldiers would make their way to rescue Mussolini's wife and their 2 youngest children, who were held under house arrest at Mussolini's summer retreat. Skorzeny's initial role in the operation was to head the team to rescue Mussolini's wife, but he was able to persuade Major Moores that he needed to be on the gliders and that he ought to be the one to rescue Mussolini. And so, Scorzeni brought with him an additional 15 members of his commando unit and members of the SS security service along for the mission. Joseph Goebbels also ordered a camera crew alongside them as well, ready to capture any potential propaganda win for the regime. And finally, there was one more man involved, General Fernando Saletti. He was dragged into the operation. In a bitter twist of fate, he was once a key figure in Mussolini's arrest, and now he was a prisoner of the SS. He had been arrested by the Germans when they invaded Northern Europe, and his role was to order the soldiers guarding Mussolini to lay down their arms, and therefore make the raid that much easier to pull off. And so, on the 12th of September, the convoy of trucks set off, along with 10 gliders. During the raid on the cable car station, the only 2 deaths of the raid were inflicted. 2 Italians. One Italian was killed when he tried to warn the guards of the incoming raid, and another Italian guard was killed when he was about to open fire on the German forces. The rest of them surrendered and were captured. As the main force made their way to the cable car station, another truck made its way to Mussolini's summer retreat to rescue his wife and 2 youngest children. There was only 7 soldiers on that truck. They were outnumbered and outgunned. However, the element of surprise was on their side. They managed to rescue Mussolini's wife without any deaths. The Italian guards were unwilling to die to prevent Mussolini's wife from being rescued. At the same time, the gliders landed and quickly overwhelmed the defences at the hotel. When combined with the element of surprise and the pleas from General Saletti to lay down arms, the raid on the hotel went off without a single shot being fired. Within 10 minutes, Mussolini had been located and was under German protection. The man carrying out the mission, Major Moores, made his way up the cable car, and the cameras were soon out recording the daring rescue. But taking front and centre stage was Scorzeni, keen to highlight his somewhat limited role in the raid. In all, it took around 15 minutes for the commandos to disembark, reach the hotel, and rescue Mussolini. But the raid wasn't over yet. The next question was how to get Mussolini down from the mountaintop. Escorting him down by road was out of the question. Italian partisans roamed the countryside, and loyalist troops could ambush them at any turn. A convoy would be too slow, too vulnerable. But flying him out presented its own kind of danger. The mountaintop offered barely enough flat ground to land a plane, let alone take off again. One mistake on the rocky surface, one miscalculation in the thin mountainous air, and the escape would end in disaster. But still, the Germans had a plan. They called in a Fieseler Fi-156 Storch, a small aircraft known for its short takeoff and landing abilities, one of the only planes at the time capable of pulling off such a stunt. Once the area was secured, the pilot, Captain Heinrich Gerlach, made a daring landing on the mountaintop. Mussolini boarded the plane, ready for his escape. But so too did Otto Scorzeni. He was unwilling to be left behind. He forced his way onto the aircraft, but as he did, the pilot protested. He told Scorzeni that if he got onto the aircraft, his extra weight could cause a problem and could even cause them to crash. But Scorzeni refused to disembark. He was determined to personally deliver the news of the rescue to Berlin. With both men crammed into the tiny plane, the pilot began takeoff. The engine started as it raced towards the cliff edge. The aircraft lifted into the air, and Mussolini was finally rescued. The plane then landed successfully near Rome. From there, Mussolini was transferred to a larger plane. He made his way to Poland to meet Hitler in the Wolf's Lair. And with that, one of the most daring special operation missions of the Second World War was completed. In the end, the role of the Luftwaffe was downplayed, and Scorzeni and the SS took all the credit for the successful raid. Scorzeni himself was awarded with a promotion and the Knight's Cross, and he would go on to be called the most dangerous man in Europe on account of this raid. Mussolini would be placed as the head of the Italian Social Republic, a Nazi puppet state in northern Italy. Mussolini was a puppet leader, with Nazi officials running the state as a buffer to protect Nazi Germany from Allied invasion. The rescue of Mussolini could rather be described as a kidnapping, holding Mussolini as a hostage to govern the remnant of fascist Italy on the Nazis' behalf, and he would soon meet his end in the most gruesome of ways. The rescue of Benito Mussolini is often portrayed as a daring raid, led by one daring scar-faced commando. But in truth, Scorzini's role was obtaining the vital intelligence as to Mussolini's location. The success of the raid was truly down to the Luftwaffe, though the use of propaganda sidelined those responsible. The raid on Gran Sasso was a daring example of a commando raid from the Second World War, one that would have disturbing consequences for the supposedly rescued Mussolini.